StrayAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve is yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. What is that? That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that's called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is we are on part 2 of our two-part mini-series, which is things that you do to separate yourself from the average masses. Before we get into that, 2 things. First of all, my daily motivation and Monday motivation messages. Text me so you can be part of my texting community. So when we start sending that message out again, you'll be getting that straight to your phone. Secondly, Work on Your Game, university.com. You want to have me as your direct coach. You want to stop wasting time, and you want to make the most of the small amount of time you have left in this life, in this year, in your career, in your business, and all the things that you want to do and actually get them done now rather than putting them off until later, which is a later that may not ever even happen for some of you. You should be reminding yourself of that consciously. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com and let's get to work. Stop wasting time and stop telling yourself that you'll do something later when you are not guaranteed later. Always remember that. And that link is down below in the description. Again, it's workonyourgameuniversity.com. Picking up on point number 4. Topic, once again, is how to separate yourself from the average masses. Number 4, time mastery. If you listen to this show at all, you hear me talk about time, the uses of time. I just talked about it when giving you that little advert for Work on Your Game University. Time mastery. Here's the good thing about time. Our time situations are not proprietary. On a high level, they're not proprietary. On a detailed level, they are, but on a high level, they're not. What I mean is everyone is entitled to 24 hours each day. As long as you're alive, the clock starts at 12 a.m. and it stops at 11:59 p.m. and 59 seconds. Everybody has that the same. All right, so it's not different for me than it is for you. The challenge with time mastery is, on the flip side, it is proprietary when we talk about our specific situations, because all of us have different things that we do when it comes to our time. Many of us have commitments that we must adhere to. All of us need a certain amount biologically for rest, also known as sleep. Our lives are all situated differently. Thusly, how we end up using our 24 hours is each of us has a completely different situation, even though we have the same amount of the resource. So to separate yourself from the average masses, what do? You must take complete control over how your time is being used, what you are doing during that time when it's being used, and compare that to what you need to, should, would, or could do during that time. Compare what you could be doing with your time every day to what you actually do with your time every day, and you will be humbled by the difference. The closer you can get to how you actually use your time, matching how you could, should, or would use your time, the better a performer you will be. I'm going to say that sentence one more time. The closer you can get to how your actual use of time is reflective of your ideal use of time, the higher level performer you become. Every one of you, listen to me now. If I was to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with you and ask you, how do you use your time? Let's say how you use your time over the last 72 hours. Then I'll say, if you could have used your last 72 hours in an ideal way with the same circumstances that happened over the last 72 hours, what would you have done differently? Everybody's going to have an answer. Everyone will have an answer of things you would have done differently over the last 3 days if you were being ideal in the use of your time. What I'm saying here is the closer you can get to making that list of things that you would have done in an ideal situation, I'm not even going to call it perfect, but an ideal situation, the closer you can get to having that list be shorter and shorter, the better you'll be. Because if the list gets shorter, that means that there's not a big delta between what you did do and what you could have done. You want that gap to get really, really small. And the older you get in life, you want that space to be smaller and smaller and smaller, i.e. the gap between who you could be, what you could be doing, how you could be living, and how you are actually living, what you are actually doing and who you actually are. Right now, the gap may be very big. Some of you listen to this right now. The person that you could be, the life you could live, and the things that you would do is way different than how you're actually living, who you actually are, and what you actually do. But over time, 5 years from now, that gap should be smaller. 10 years from now should be even smaller. 20 years from now, maybe the gap doesn't even exist. Or maybe you created a new gap because you set new goals. The point is, the gap that you have today should not still be the same gap a year from now, 5, 10 years from now, because you should always be getting closer to the ideal. Now, in order for you to keep getting closer to the ideal, you have to be reminding yourself of the ideal and then doing the necessary things strategically, systematically, mindset wise, and implementation wise to close that gap. But if you have the gap, but you're not doing anything to actively close the gap, then the gap can stay the same no matter how old you get and how much time you use. That's a bad formula. See, that's what you don't want. And I talk to too many people who have that happening simply because you have not done what I'm telling you here in point number 4, which is mastering your time. One of the keys to mastering your time is reminding yourself that you only have a certain amount of it, rather than what most people do, the coping mechanism, the rational lie that you tell yourself, also known as rationalizing, that it doesn't matter if I do it now, as long as I have time later, I'll do it later. That's bullshit. You do not have time. Nobody has a guaranteed amount of time. Average masses tell themselves that I have time, I'll get to it later. So I know somebody else who did it in 10 years, so I'm only on year 2, so that's okay. I got 8 more years to get it. No, you don't. Who told you you had 8 more years? Just because they had 8 years, you think you got 8 years? I don't think so. Any of you know anyone who died before they reached the age that you are today? Of course you do. So why are you talking as if you have time in the future? You don't have time in the future. Did you get a guarantee from your creator that you have a certain amount of time? I didn't. If you did, please tell me how that conversation went. I never heard of it. So the challenge with time mastery is you must get complete control over your use of time. And again, how your time is going to be used. And the way that you do this, let me back up. The way you get complete control of your time is by prescribing to yourself. Prescribing, that means telling yourself up front, and scribing means to write it down, have it written up front, the use of your time. How your time gets used, when, where, and why. And then, because it's already prescribed to you, all you do is follow the damn directions. That's it. And if you ever been to a doctor and you got a prescription, what is a prescription? It is the doctor telling the pharmacist who will get the prescription, here's what this patient needs, here's how much they need to get, give it to them. The doctor prescribes it, writes it down ahead of time. You give it to the pharmacist. The pharmacy fulfills the prescription, and then you go take the damn medicine that you were told to take. That's it. The same thing you need to do with your time. Prescribe what it's supposed to look like in detail, and then follow your own plan. That's it. Or have it prescribed to you. It doesn't have to be your plan. You get somebody else's plan. And you ever found a recipe on the internet and then you went and made it? Okay, so it was prescribed what needed to be in it. All you did was follow the instructions that somebody else created, the strategy that someone else made, the system someone else did, and you followed it and you got the same result. Every human being is capable of this, as long as you are capable of reading. Everybody listen to me, capable of reading? Okay, so none of you is excluded from using this tool that I'm presenting to you here. Is anybody excluded? No. You see, what the average masses do is they tell themselves that they have time in the future, so I'll put it off until later. The problem is eventually you don't have any more laters, and the stuff that you want to do is still undone. That's why the graveyard is the most valuable real estate on earth, because all the potential within all the people who didn't do the shit that they said they were going to do goes with them when they die. I'm pausing there because I want that one to sink in. Most people simply wake up, get out of bed, and just start living with no actual plan for how they're going to use their hours and minutes, as if the hours and minutes are expendable. But they will be very, very, very frugal and discerning when it comes to how to use their money, even though the money is backed by, in the United States that is, your money is backed by literally nothing. It is backed by blind faith of the people of the United States of America. That's not a theory, that's a fact. The US dollar is backed by literally nothing. It's not backed by gold. There's nothing real behind that money. But people will get very, very discerning over spending $10 or $100 or $1,000, but be completely flippant and casual about wasting time. When a dollar is easily replaceable and it's actually worth less today than it was yesterday, your money, your dollars, but you will waste time without giving it a second thought. This is what we call hustling backwards. See, your time will get used whether you're conscious about it or not. The problem is, if your time is not being used consciously, intentionally, and purposely, then your life is just floating by and you're not even aware of what's happening. All right, that's what makes you average. Most people, this is how they live. This is why most people are average. High level performers use every minute purposely. When I was in college, for example, I noticed that my sophomore year coach, my basketball team coach, my sophomore year, he would have a script for how every minute of practice would go. He had this little piece of paper folded up in his shirt pocket, and he would pull it out and he would look at it. He would say, all right, that's done now. Everybody go over here. Then everybody go over here. He'd be looking at the little script every like 5, 10 minutes and telling us what to do next and where to go. But I noticed that he had it scripted out. He never talked about it, but he kept pulling out the paper. So it was obvious that he had the thing scripted. And I had three different coaches in college. I had one my freshman year, one my sophomore year, and then one guy I coached my last 2 years. And of the three coaches I had, the sophomore year coach is the only one who did what I just described. Freshman year coach and my last coach, junior year coach, neither of them scripted anything. We would just do shit. I'm not saying that made them bad coaches, but we would just do shit. Nothing was scripted out. And I've heard other coaches in sports often script things out these days. I think this was a relatively new idea 20 years ago, but I think these days many coaches script out their practices, their trainings, etc. Any coaches listening to this, you can let me know if that's a normal thing for you. So let me ask you a question. Even if you're not a sports coach, I'm not a sports coach. How often is your day scripted out? How often is your day scripted out? If you're watching this on video, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull up my calendar just so you can see. I'm pulling up my calendar on my phone just so you can see. All right, this is my calendar. So it's not zoomed in, so you can't read what the actual events are. But if you look at this calendar, you see all these different colors on the calendar. This is a Sunday through a Saturday, an entire week. And you see all these different colors and all these different blocks of time. All right, this is my calendar. This is me telling myself exactly where I need to be, exactly what I need to do, when, where, and I know exactly what needs to happen in these times. Your calendar needs to look like this. And those of you who are not watching on video, you can just pull it up on video so you can see it. All right. You need to have your entire day scripted out, and every minute needs to be accounted for. When do you start? When do you finish? What should be happening in that time frame? All right. High level performers do this. Point number 5. Today's topic, once again, is how to separate yourself from the average masses. Number 5, become a master communicator. Very important caveat I got to give you about communication that a lot of people overlook. Masses of people, I'll get to it in a moment. The masses of people are poor communicators. Most people are just not good at communication. And what I mean by that is, one, most people cannot verbalize their thoughts. They can't take what's in their head and explain it compendiously to other people. Number 2, most people cannot get their points across in written format. So even if you can say it, many people cannot write things down in a way that other people can understand it clearly. Number 3, many people struggle having conversations with an individual person, let alone having a conversation with a group, also known as public speaking. Most people suck at, individual speaking and public speaking. And number 4, most people are bad listeners. These are the ways people suck at communication. Most people are all 4 of these things put together. Let me say them again. Poor at verbalization, poor at writing your communication down, poor at having conversations, one-to-one or one-to-many, and poor listeners. Most people are all 4 of these bad. 4 Fs across the board. I suggest you go in the opposite direction on all of the above and get good at all 4. You need to be good at all 4 of these. Speaking your mind, writing what's on your mind, talking to one person, talking to a group of people, and you need to be a good listener. All 4. You want to be an amazing communicator. You get down all 4, you become an amazing communicator. And again, being an amazing communicator, folks, does not mean dazzling people with your verbiage. Some people think that's what it means. It's actually not that at all. Being a master communicator means having the ability to get your point across to anyone and any audience, regardless of their level of knowledge of whatever it is that you're talking about. In other words, if you're a molecular biologist, you should be able to explain to a classroom of 5th graders what you do and how you do it, even though they don't have anywhere near your level of knowledge, expertise, or experience. So if you went in there trying to dazzle them with what you know, they wouldn't understand you, which means you failed at communication. When you're public speaking, your job is not to say whatever it is you want to say. Your job is to make sure everyone who heard you understood what you said. And if that means you need to, quote unquote, dumb down what you say, then you do it. Because your job is to get the point across. Your job is not to just say whatever you want to say, even if nobody understood it. Because then you failed in communication. Why were you communicating if people don't even know what you said? What's the point? You wasted your energy. They wasted their time trying to understand you. Your job as a communicator is to make sure your point gets across to whoever you're talking to. And I've told you all, my superpower, if I had to point to one thing, is my ability to do just that. Take something that is complex and simplify it, make it easy for anyone to understand. I do it every single episode of the show. That's literally my job. So no matter what it is that you are an expert at, someone who's not an expert should understand what you do if you were to sit down and explain it to them. It's not about you dazzling people and showing them how much you know that they don't know. This is what a lot of people do when they're in their egos. That is not master communication. That's your ego talking. And there's nothing wrong with having an ego, but if you're trying to master communication, then sometimes you gotta, if your ego is attached to how smart you are, you gotta put that aside and let's focus on the actual task at hand, which is producing a result. Producing a result in communication means, did the other person understand you and did you understand them? That's the goal in communication. That's the result-based business of communication. So communicating with a person, you get them, they get you. If you're going over other people's heads with your communication, you are not communicating with them. All right, they're missing it, you're missing it. It's like you speaking Chinese, they're speaking English, and neither one of you speaks the other language. Y'all ain't getting anywhere. All right, nothing's going to get done in that situation. So for you geniuses out there listening to this, you must have the ability to, as I said, dumb down, so to speak, anything that you need to say to make sure that the people you're trying to reach understand what you're saying. Because if they don't get it, then what were you talking for? Why'd you do all that talking? Master communicators never fail to get their point across. Let me say that again. Master communicators never fail to get their point across. That does not mean, when I say get your point across, that does not mean that everyone agrees with you. Some of you listen to this show and you hear me say things that you do not agree with, but you are never unclear on what I'm saying. So for you to not agree, you got to understand what I'm saying. All right, none of you has ever listened to an episode of this show and came away and said, I listened to that, but I have no idea what Dre was talking about. I don't really mean what he was saying. I don't really understand what he was saying. I don't really get what he meant by that. I don't really know what his angle is. None of you has ever listened to a single episode of this show and came away with that conclusion. Not one ever. Why? Because I just told you, as a master communicator, I know you're going to get my point. You don't have to agree with my point, but you will get my point. All right, that's what master communication sounds like. Moving on, point number 6. Today's topic, once again, is how to separate yourself rather from the average masses. Number 6, relentless discipline. I mean, if you follow everything that I've said so far in this series, relentless discipline is just the easy end game of all of this. What does relentless discipline mean? Everything I've said so far in this series falls under this point. Now, everything I've said so far falls under this point right here. Discipline is about following a set of rules and standards on a consistent basis, regardless of how you feel about doing the thing that is being prescribed to you. In other words, if you say I'm going to go to the gym every day and you wake up tomorrow morning and you're tired and it's cold and your leg hurts and you got a headache, you're not negotiating with yourself about whether or not you're going to the gym. Why? Because the discipline says go to the gym. So it's non-negotiable. That's relentless discipline. That's what it looks like. That's what it sounds like. Mastering your time, mastering communication, doing what needs to be done, being clear on what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, when and where it needs to be done are all part of being a disciplined person. Most people have a little to no discipline whatsoever. Most people are not disciplined at all. So even though I'm prescribing you relentless discipline, that's like a level 100. Most people's discipline is at like a level 20 maybe. And the 20 is only because somebody's making them do it. Like they got a job or they have parents or they would go to jail if they didn't do certain things. So they do it. That's the level 20. The gap between the 20 and the 100, you don't even have to be all the way to 100. You get up to a 50, a 60, a 70, an 80, you're going to be way above most people. I'm suggesting you get to 100. I'm setting the bar at 100 because what reason do you have to not be disciplined? I mean, you're trying to be a high level performer, right? Why not do 100? Why stair step it and only do 80? Do the last 20. Why not? What's stopping you? Do you want to be a high level performer or you just want to be good? You want to be a good player? You want to be a difference maker? Difference makers go to 100. Good players might get to a 60, a 70, an 80, and they're comfortable with that. But I mean, what are we talking about here? What are we doing? You want to be a high level performer or you just want to be okay? This is a rhetorical question from me to you. It's not a rhetorical question from you to you. Most people have no discipline whatsoever, like nothing. They don't show up. They're never on time. They are often unprepared. They are poor communicators and they do not make the most of their time. That's how most people live. Let me tell you that list again. Think about the last person you had a conversation with. All right, literally. Everybody listen to me right now. Think about the last person you had a conversation with. I'm going to list these again and tell me the last person you talked. I don't care who it was. I don't care if it was your wife, your girlfriend, if it was one of your kids. We'll exclude kids. The last adult you had a conversation with. All right, we'll take your kids out of it. The last adult you had a conversation with. It could be one of your coworkers. It could be a staff member. It could have been your boss. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be your grandma. Last person you had a conversation with. Tell me, how many of these do they check the box on? They don't show up reliably. They're not on time consistently. They are often unprepared. They are poor communicators. They do not maximize their time, and they're generally lazy. So I just gave you 6 things. Most people are all six. Most people fit all six of those. So where's the opportunity? Where's the opportunity, everybody? Opportunity is always in the opposites. And opportunity is always in the opposites. When you look around and see what everybody's doing, the opportunity is in the opposite of what everybody's doing. It may not be exactly the opposite, but the opportunity is somewhere in there. You just got to look for it. I'm pointing you in a direction. The direction is if everybody's going that way, the opportunity is that way. All right, you just got to look that way and see what's over there. There's something over there that's an opportunity. You got to find it. I'm pointing you in the right direction. I'm not saying exactly do that, but there's a direction there. Everybody understand me? How many people do you know who are fully disciplined? Again, how many people do you know who check all these boxes? Let me say the list again. They show up all the time. They are always early. They are always prepared. They are excellent communicators. They maximize their time, and you never see them being lazy. How many people do you know who fit all of that? I would guess for most of you, you might know one person who fits that description. You might know one person. If you're in the military, maybe you know more because in the military, you kind of don't have a choice. But let's just say outside of the military, those of you who are in or have been in, outside of the military, how many people do you know living in everyday civilian life who fits all of those? They check all of those boxes. I would guess rather, you might know one person. So there's your opportunity. All right. And guess what? The first person should be the person in the mirror. Let's recap today's class. Part 2, how to separate yourself from the average masses. Number 4, mastery of your time. We all get 24 hours in a day, but our 24 hours are situated in different ways based on the lives that we live. So you need to have complete control and complete mastery over how your 24 hours are being spent every single day. And it should be by design, not by default. Everybody understand the difference? Design, not by default. Design means you're doing it on purpose. It's not just randomly happening. Point number 5, become a master communicator. Communication is about your ability to verbalize your points, get your point across verbally and written, get your point across to an individual or to a group, and your ability to listen. Half of communication is your ability to consume what other people are saying, not just saying what you want to say. Number 6, relentless discipline. Everything I've said in this series falls under the heading of discipline. How many people do you know who fit all these things that I just said? Show up on time, be prepared, are a strong communicator, maximize your time, and you're not lazy. How many people you know who fit that description? The opportunity is in being the person who does. All that said, everybody, workonyourgameuniversity.com. You want to be coached by me on how to become this person that I've been talking to you about the last 2 days and every day that I talk here on this show, and you want me to help coach you to become that so you can be the best version of yourself and maximize your potential so you can stop thinking about who and what you could be and actually be it, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com and let's stop bullshit. Work on your game. Dre, all